6:01. We'll call to order and we'll do a roll call and then an agenda review. So I will call us to order at 6:01 and let's do a roll call. John Brandt.
I'm here.
Steve Douglas.
Here.
Andy Hartman.
Present.
Kevin Thusius.
I'm here.
And I am here as chair, Melissa Gavin. And I see that we've got Michael Pomykowski and Brian Mooney. Brian, do we have anybody else joining us tonight that I maybe can't see?
Not that I am aware of.
Okay. Okay. Well, we're going to roll into our agenda. Well, first I'll give you a quick review of the agenda, which is we will do some committee member report outs and updates. We had some outstanding things to work on over the intervening few weeks. And so we'll give a report out on that. And we will also have a discussion and possible approval of our September 14th Sustainability Committee meeting minutes. We will delve into a discussion of needs, research needs around the Village Hall Police Building, and then continue work around our sustainability plan implementation. And then we'll wrap up. And I'm going to have us wrapped up by, my goal is to have us wrapped up by 7 o'clock tonight. So with that, I am going to pause again to see if there's any public comment. I don't believe we do have any, but Brian, again, is there anything that I don't know about?
No, there was one email that came in this morning from Peter. I'm probably going to butcher his last name, Anthony, and he was letting us know about an upcoming meeting at the Black Earth or regarding the Black Earth Creek green infrastructure. And this was going to be held at the Wisconsin Heights High School on November 1st from 5:30 to 8:30 p.m.
Okay, that's great. And then, Brian, you sent that to me. Did you share that with anybody else?
I may have that one I might have sent just to you. I honestly I cannot remember off the top of my head.
Okay, all right. Well, I can share that around because it's in it's in keeping with our sustainability plan implementation. So I can I'll make a note to share that around with the rest of the committee later. I'd like to move on then to, it's a good segue to committee member report outs and updates, and open it up for anybody who has an update to share or report out.
I can go first, I guess.
Great, thanks, Andy.
Yeah, so there's two things I think to highlight from the last village board meeting. One would be the grant policy that was written and approved at the last meeting, that basically states that heads of departments can apply for any grants that they wish, as long as there are no recurring costs to the village and or matching funds to take place. So that is all squared away. And then additionally, we got to a discussion on supplemental requests for the upcoming budget. One of which was the $5,000 for to allocate to grant writers to apply for sustainability grants related to the village. And so that was discussed by the village board, and either accidentally, incidentally, we voted on that, and it was a 4-3 vote in support of that supplemental request, which is good news. But it will definitely, and maybe Brian can chime in here in a second. I believe that what took place at the last board meeting is not binding in whatever shape or form. And so it'll come back to the village board, where any board member can pull out any supplemental for further discussion, which is highly likely for this one to be pulled out and discussed again based on the conversation we had at the village board meeting in September. So I think one of the things that I'm hopeful for that we can maybe as a committee is provide some examples to the board as far as like what grants are currently out there that we could allocate funds for, so that they can get a sense of what return on investment is potentially out there. one of the bigger arguments that I heard in opposition to this was that there is no sort of there's no specifications as to how the money should or shouldn't be used. As far as like when a grant is discovered or recommended to Brian, how does he move forward? My take on it was, well, that's why we hired these professionals to run departments for the village, is that they should use their professional judgment to determine what is a likely chance of success and then pull the trigger in order to, make their lives easier and to reach the sustainability goals of the village. So that's my update. Brian, can you just maybe chime in on the logistics of what took place as far as the 4-3 roll call vote?
Sure. So, as Andy noted, we had covered supplemental requests for the upcoming 2023 budget at the last village board meeting. The topic was listed for discussion. As Andy noted, I think erroneously so, we may have jumped the gun and held a vote on that. And as of right now, my understanding is all the supplementals, as Andy did note, will be brought forward for or brought into and added to the draft budget that the village board is going to look at the end of this month. And as Andy noted, it is likely that any of those items could be brought up for additional discussion. Andy is correct, though. There was a 4-3 vote that was held on that. It is not binding. So, and there has been additional discussions about this within the village ever since then. So, my guess is there's going to be, that and others that are going to be brought up for, additional conversation. And there's also been some proposal things related to other suggestions with that are getting mulled over right now. So, more to come, but in summation, I think Andy is spot on with how the discussion went regarding the delegation to village department heads to make those executive decisions on behalf of the village. I think is a positive first step, but I think it's going to be one of that one will for sure be brought up, especially based on some of the conversations that have come up of late for additional discussion this month.
So for clarification, are there additional requests for grant writers aside from sustainability purposes, or are you talking about because I'm trying to figure out if it's specifically around sustainability grant making and funding, or if it's just the additional cost of a grant writer that's having people delve into the details.
Yeah, it's the latter. It's the $5,000 that seems to be the sticking point. I don't think anybody had any major issues with sustainability specific grants. Yeah.
Okay. All right. And so would it be helpful? I think, Andy, you indicated that it might be helpful if we could give some examples about, what could this be useful for, or what are some upcoming opportunities? Would a memo from the sustainability committee in support of this funding be helpful, or would it not be helpful?
Oh, I think absolutely. And if we can specifically direct them towards, like, here's an example of an upcoming opportunity, so they can see sort of the benefit that is out there. And the other big part of this discussion surrounded the fact that, like, let's say, for example, we don't find any sustainability grants that fit the village or the village qualifies for, then that $5,000 goes back into the pot at the end of the year. And then when we, draft the next budget, we would go through the same process all over again.
Okay, I'm happy to bottom line, or work on with somebody if somebody else wants to work with me on drafting a memo. I think it'd be pretty easy to come up with a few examples of upcoming opportunities and then just kind of lay out the case for it. So happy to do that. What would be a timeline?
I would say before the next village board meeting.
Okay, and that's October. Would that be like the 24th?
Yeah,
24th, I think is correct.
Okay. Yep. Is that something that other folks want to review? Is there anybody who wants to work on that with me? You guys trust me that much? Really?
I just want to stay out of this one so that it's coming from like, the committee and not necessarily having me be a point person on it.
Yep. Okay.
I will help you with it.
Okay. All right, John. You and me. We'll
We're
tag
gonna
team
make
it.
it happen.
We're gonna make it happen. We're gonna make it rain. $5,000.
Yeah.
This is Kevin. Andy, is there anybody on Parks that's going to do the same thing? Because I know the same concept is, I mean, Parks would be supportive of asking for the same budget item, I'm sure.
Yeah, they did not ask for a supplemental at the time. I think it was the sustainability, and then the chief had, I think, 2 items, if I remember correctly. It was just the 3 additional requests.
So the supplemental is specifically this 5,000 as a request for the sustainability committee.
Yeah, for sustainability grant writing. Yep.
I see. Okay. I thought something you said earlier made it sound like it was more broad than that. Okay.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. Thanks.
Yep.
And by the way, I'm in full support.
Cool.
I was questioning your support, Kevin. So thank you for clarifying.
I've been away, y'all. I'm just happy to be back.
Andy, any other updates?
No, that does it for me.
Oh, you know what, Andy? Actually, you shared the response from the library's experience getting LEED certification. Could you refresh our memory? Is that something that
Yeah.
you can remind us about what their responses were?
Yeah. So okay, I'm trying to remember now. I reached out to Pamela Bobson just basically to ask what the process was for their LEED certification and what level they have. I believe she said they have the silver level of certification. And essentially the biggest takeaway for me was that the architectural firms that they worked with specialized in LEED certification. So like one was out of Green Bay, the other was out of Madison, I believe. And so she basically talked about the process. She said the cost has more or less been recouped at this point in time for LEED certification, as far as like the savings on energy efficiencies from the LEED certification. And that the best path forward would be to encourage the village board to pursue LEED certification by acquiring architectural firms and construction firms that have experience in that particular certification process. I did forgo having a conversation after our last library meeting. One, for an additional obligation that I had to leave for, but 2, because I was kind of hoping that we could take a look at her responses as a committee and then just see if there's any questions that come up that I can then ask clarifying questions from Pamela at the next library board meeting, which is next Tuesday.
Great. Thank you, Andy. And Andy, did you send those to everybody or just to me? Pamela's response.
Yeah, I'll double check and forward it to all members.
Okay. All right. Terrific. Does anybody else have an update or a report out to provide?
This is Steve. I do not have additional
Okay.
report outs. And Andy, I'm pretty sure I did get the discussion points from that you had sent around.
Cool.
From the library.
Okay, great. So it probably did go around to everybody. I thought that was the case, but okay. John, do you have any report outs? I know you were going to try to do some outreach to some architectural firms about LEED certification. Were you able to land any of those, any conversations?
I have not yet. I do have a contact. I have not made contact with the person yet though.
All right, thanks.
That's probably more on me.
Well, you're officially retired now, so you have no excuse.
Oh, please.
All right, thanks everybody. And just one more, any other report outs and updates before we move on? Okay, I'm going to move us on to discussion and possible approval of the September 14th meeting minutes. Have folks had a chance to review that? And if so, happy to take a motion to approve them as presented.
Steve will make a motion to approve the minutes.
I'll second that.
Thanks, Steve. Thanks, Andy. Any discussion? Okay, all in favor of approving the minutes as presented, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, minutes are approved unanimously. Next up on the agenda is discussion of research needs for the new Village Hall Police Building. And for here, we can, maybe we can dig in a little bit to that memo that came from Pamela at the library. Because I think that's the biggest bit of information that we're chasing down now is encouraging the village and helping the village to pursue LEED certification. So have folks, so I guess could we just take a minute to kind of skim through the responses from Pamela? Does everybody have that? I'd like to make sure that we have an opportunity to discuss this and give Andy any feedback to take back to the library committee before the next meeting. So my recommendation here is we just take a minute to review this this document that came from Andy, and then if you're ready to talk about it, you know, then we can move into discussion about it.
It would have been an email from September 15th.
So Steve, you said you had it. Kevin, John, are you able to find it?
I found it.
Okay.
I need to re-find it. It's on
Okay,
another
and,
computer. Actually, John,
um,
if you have it there, do you mind forwarding to one of my
I could
emails?
also, or I could share my screen and pull it up.
Oh, there we go.
Actually, so Brian, can you give me screen sharing ability?
Yeah, let me try to go
And
back.
it's sent to you too, Steve.
Thank you.
Kevin, while we're doing this, just to bring you up to speed, because I think you might have missed the last meeting or maybe two. We've had a little bit of back and forth with Jay over the last couple of months. You know, our recommendation for the Village Hall Police Building was to pursue LEED certification. That's just sort of the gold standard for making sure it's a sustainable building. He had some questions about asking us to recommend kind of a level of certification and you know, the estimated costs. And so Andy did some outreach to Pamela, who was part of that original certification for LEED for the library, and John's volunteered to do some outreach to some architectural firms around town to see if we can chase down some numbers.
Hey, Melissa, you're gonna have to refresh my memory on going into this again for you. What was
for sharing the screen?
to stop share and open share for you?
Yes. So, or Brian, I can just re-forward you the email and you can share it yourself. Do you want to do that?
Yeah, let me see if I can get that to work.
Okay. I'm going to send it right now. So it's at the top of your inbox.
Thanks for the summary, Melissa. I sort of gathered what was going on, and sounds like you guys have had good discussions, and sorry I missed the last couple meetings, but excited to hear that. I don't know. I wonder, we could keep searching all day long about, you know, what's silver going to cost, what's gold going to cost, but I'm sure all these architectural firms are going to say it depends.
Yep. Yeah.
So I think what Jay's looking for, maybe hard numbers, but they may not exist. It's more about you know, let's have somebody just design it from, you know, with intent of LEED certification. And there might be some things late in the game that push you up or down from silver to gold or whatever it might be, but I'm not sure we're going to be able to get Jay, as much as he wants it, a hard and fast black and white answer. I'm sure you guys talked about that.
Yep, that's pretty much exactly what we've said, and we've agreed to do our best to try to do some outreach and get some ballpark and some, you know, best estimates. But yeah, and that's why we need a professional to even come in here and give us an estimate, because we can't even make guesses.
Yeah.
Brian, were you able to get that?
Yeah, the email just came in here, but I'm
Okay.
having some issues here on the screen. Give me just a moment here.
And part of what I'm curious about, because John, you did a little bit of investigation and came up with a firm that does lead certification in the Madison area. And I'm curious if it's the same firm that the village worked with for the library, because that would be a really nice overlap for to
looks
speak
like-
with them.
Sorry, it looks like they worked with the firm out of La Crosse and not Madison, so it's Greenville and La Crosse. But she does state, you know, a hard number for lead certification. It looks like you designed the building for lead certification, and then you have to then pay for the cost of having the certification done. And I'm wondering if that is the cost that Jay would like to avoid, or if he's discussing the 2 to 5% increase in the project to design a building that's LEED certified. So I guess there's two different ways to look at it. I guess, yeah.
This is just crawling here, guys. I'm so sorry. I don't know why I don't know if you got the email up on the screen here, but I'm having problems opening the Word.
Well, yeah, I think, is everybody else able to pull it up on their own computer then?
Yeah, I've got it up.
Okay, all right. Then I think, Brian, if you can't get it, that's okay.
Right.
So I think that, like, the highlights here are, you know, LEED certification isn't cheap, according to this estimate. And this was, what year would this have happened? I'm looking right now through the memo. I don't see any. Does anybody know when this was? Because I would imagine that costs have increased.
Yeah. Hey there.
Just for the certification. Does anybody know what year that took place?
We moved here in 04, and this probably happened 2 years after that.
Okay. So about 2006, it was $19,000 for certification. Part of the cost was having a professional complete a myriad of dense forms. Not sure what the certification costs today. But she suspects the costs have actually gone down. That's interesting. And the certification was paid for with fundraised dollars. That's interesting. And that might be why there was not as much opposition, or, you know, I don't know if I'd say not as much. I'm not sure if I can speak to how much opposition there was or wasn't, but that might have made an easier sell.
That whole section on the pole barn made me chuckle a little bit. But it looks like she provided with some connections of the previous village board president and member or trustee who was on the board that we could maybe reach out to get their clarification, which is nice. Yeah.
Okay. The board devised a plan that would have at least the least amount of impact on taxpayers. So, John, I'd still, if you can still try to make those connections, so we can have a couple conversations with some firms about what it would look like in, you know, 2022. It would be good for us to circle back with Pamela and see if there's, you know, potential for fundraising today, if those fundraising opportunities are still live. But I guess what I'm hearing from the library doesn't, for me, there's nothing substantial that changes from our tact of pushing for a LEED certification for the village. And I don't, until we talk to a firm, I don't think that we can get any more specific numbers, but it might be helpful to provide that number of $19,000 to Jay and letting him know that it's a silver certification or silver level.
Oh, Melissa, one thing, I know before the last meeting, I stated that we were going to be doing a tour of DeForest's Village Hall, but their Village Hall, it turns out, was not built LEED certified.
Okay. Okay. Good to know. Do we know of any others that are?
I don't know of any right off the top of my head. I'm sorry. And we're looking at different community sites. I know there's other buildings. Jay's referenced the police station, the Midtown Police Station, which he was a part of overseeing construction on, which obviously was. As far as municipalities around Madison, though, I am not certain on that. I'll
Okay.
do a little bit more research.
So it seems like I'd like to get an update to Jay via some kind of a memo that incorporates what we heard from Pamela at the library, indicates that we are trying to track down and have conversations with a couple of firms in Wisconsin. What other information might we include in an update to Jay? And I'd also say a continued push for a LEED certification in that memo, but
I think we all know that it's going to cost more to be LEED certified, whatever level. And but I think we also know that, and this is soft, I admit it. But we also know that it's something that is more sexy for fundraising too. So I think if it's going to be hard to sort of privately fundraise as Jay's wanted to for things like office chairs, but I don't think it's going to be as difficult to fundraise if we say, okay, we need to fundraise, say $30,000 or $50,000, whatever the number may be, or 100, in order to make this from a non-LEED certified to LEED certified building. So I think that's the sellable part of it to me.
yeah, I think that's true. Kevin, is the Ice Age Trail Alliance LEED certified?
No, no, we are really close. But when they built the building for us, it wasn't big enough for them to try to go through the certification process, and it was going to cost us a fee at that point. And we just said no, don't worry about it.
Okay, so there's a square footage recommendation for certification.
There was in 2009, or at least that's the take on it.
Okay.
That because we weren't going to reach the LEED levels, I think is what it was, because our efficiencies weren't going to impact enough space. So it may not be that you weren't big enough. It was just that our efficiencies weren't going to work out for the size of the building at the time.
Okay.
We've since added on to it, of course.
I think, I mean, I have a couple thoughts on this. I think we should be able to provide him with a current cost of the certification, I don't know, testing process, whatever it is. The 19,000 that they spent in 2006, we should be able to know what that number is now. And I suspect an architect would be able to get us that. And I would think it would be the same no matter what. But as far as the cost of building a building, yeah, it's going to be more expensive. But then you have also got to offset that with it's going to be cheaper to operate. And so I think those end up being a net wash over time, and actually a benefit the longer you run the building. And I think we need to come up with a payback time period.
That's a really good idea.
Looking at what Andy asked of the folks at the library, Pamela responded that when they started researching the project, costs to build a LEED certified facility were around 5% higher than building a non-LEED certified building, but by the time the project started, costs were only 2% higher. So that's really interesting to me. And the slightly higher cost has more than paid for itself through reduced utility costs, less water consumption, and providing the public and health with the staff with healthy, non-toxic environment. So that's interesting though, that there is a 5% and then down to 2%. So I don't know what it compares to today, but yeah, John, I think a firm could let us know what those numbers are, but at least we have some baseline. We have something to point to based on our experience with the library, and that's really helpful.
I also was looking real quick. The Fitchburg Public Library is LEED certified.
Yeah, and I bet the Monona Library is too. So, yeah, but I'm curious about police, village halls and police departments too. Those buildings, just to give kind of like an apples to apples. Okay, well, so my recommendation here is that we provide Jay with a written update and give them some of the information that we got from the library's experience. Let them know that we are working on having a couple conversations with firms here, and let them know that we continue to very strongly support LEED certification. Aside from those 3 chunks of information pieces, is there anything else we would want to give an update about to Jay? And is there anybody who's interested in helping to craft that?
I can jump on with someone else who is John. Did you start sort of making contact with some firms and stuff like that?
I have somebody I have to contact, but I have not done so yet. I'm going to do that tomorrow.
Yeah, maybe what I'll do is I'll like craft a skeletal memo with the stuff that we talked about, like just sort of for you and I to add to. And
Okay.
I'll share it with you.
Okay.
All right, cool. Is there anything else on this item of Village Hall updates that folks want to add or talk about?
That is a very nice resource. Andy dropped it into the chat there. You can search for LEED. There's the Green Building Council has a portfolio too. You can search by location. It looks like you can continue to kind of drill down if we wanted to find
great.
specific examples. Yeah, the one I found, it's a little different. I'll put that in there too.
Yeah, Edgerton City Hall is in here. I see there's a couple of them.
Okay, so great. That's really helpful.
What's somewhat interesting is that there hasn't been a City Hall certified since 2013. So I don't know if that's a lack of data or what, but
Okay.
No time like the present.
Yeah, right. That's really interesting.
I have like
yeah, especially with so many local communities, like governments making goals and creating climate action plans. It's really interesting. I wonder what's going on there. Okay. Well, anything else on this topic? Otherwise, I'm going to move us along, and Andy and John will take the next steps in drafting an update for Jay. Okay. Next item on the agenda is continued discussion of the sustainability plan implementation, and I'm going to pull that spreadsheet up. It's a Google Sheets, and I can drop that link in the chat in a second. Just need to pull that up. All right. Brian, are you able to share your screen now? I just dropped the chat, the
Yep,
link
that's
in
on
the chat. If
time,
you can,
trying to see if I can get that.
awesome. Okay.
Is that up now?
Yep, looks good.
Okay.
And Andy, I'm realizing that it dropped off my list that you and I are going to work together to create like a decision tree or checklist. And I didn't note that as a next step, and I'm seeing it here, and I'm glad this is a plan and we're coming back to it on a regular basis, because that totally fell off my radar. So
Yep.
Brian, if you scroll down, we've talked, or I would like to talk a little bit more about some of the ones further down. Yeah, like right there is perfect, starting at row 7.
Okay.
So I'm realizing, like I said, that Andy, I think you and I were supposed to do this, and I was gonna start an email to you to get this moving. So I'm glad that we're revisiting this. I will make a note that this is something that you and I are going to come back to the sustainability committee with. So I don't have anything to report on that, except I dropped the ball. So we'll be back on a future meeting to share an update on that one.
No worries.
Andy, how about this next one, establishing a goal to meet 100% of villages' needs with renewable energy? You talked about drafting a resolution based on other communities. Were you able to do any research and come up with some draft language?
I was not. My objective was I have an independent study senior who is the head of the Green Club, and so I was going to have them do some research and make some recommendations for me to take a look at. So I'll just put that in
Okay.
for between now and our next meeting.
Okay. Great. So I'm going to skip over to row 8, marketing the village medication, drop location to community members. Does anybody even know where is our medication drop, and what kind of marketing do we currently have about it?
I feel like public safety talked about this recently, but
I thought it was at the police station.
yeah.
So yeah, we know.
I can't say
Well,
I've
there-
ever seen it referenced anywhere, but that would make the most sense, I think, as far as just because there is a little bit of security involved in this kind of thing.
So I guess the first thing is, let's find out where it is for sure. And then it seems to me like the couple of places where we might want to do some marketing around it. One is at least on the sustainability committee's website, but it seems like it's got to be bigger than that. Like, people who aren't interested in sustainability should still know that there's a place to safely dump your medication. So can we get something in the village newsletter the next time it goes out? What are some other opportunities that we can make sure that this is just on folks' radar?
I think we probably have an opportunity with the 2 pharmacies in town also that would
Yeah,
be
great point,
interested in
Steve.
in that. And I'm becoming a little more interested in this, so I would be glad to take a lead on whatever needs to happen next. I guess is, first of all, I got to find it.
Yeah.
I can
Yeah.
confirm that with Tony too, and see with Chief and get something out to everybody, confirming if that's on site.
That would be great. I'm also curious what the limitations are for that. Like, would they actually take, like narcotic medications, for instance, versus I mean, a lot of this stuff you just don't want people dumping it down their toilets, like,
Mhm.
a lot of these chemicals will make their way into the water supply when people flush them. So we don't want that. But then there's a whole nother class of people who have, narcotics at home. And yeah, just kind of curious what the range would be. So thanks for checking into that.
Sure thing.
So Brian, you'll check in with Chief Tony and be in touch with Steve. And Steve, once you confirm the location, you'll start to scope out ways to share this information.
Yes, that sounds great.
Okay.
And I
All
could
right.
I could just pop into the pharmacies too, and just kind of on a, quiet time, if there is a quiet time for them, and just see what their thoughts are as far as, how they handle things as well. Because they may offer that as a service. I don't know. But it certainly would be a great place to market it if we had some
Yeah.
promotional material. Hey, were you aware that Cross Plains has this resource at the police office?
I know that Doug Brunner would be a good trustee to reach out to as the on public safety committee. I know they've been trying to do like outreach and marketing for just like how to make the village safer as a resident. Like they had a campaign to do that the last couple months. So maybe this is something that they can also try and help advertise and get the word out to once we figure out all the details.
Great idea.
Is there somebody who could update this spreadsheet? I'm holding a sleeping baby and I've lost all ability to use my arms right now. Could somebody update the spreadsheet and just indicate that Steve will take the reins on that one and what the next steps are? And Steve, thanks so much for doing that.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, or if somebody else has got it, I'll look. I just don't know exactly where we are on that. I can't find it.
We're on row 8.
Got it. Okay. Yep, I got it.
Thank you, Andy. All right. Love to talk a little bit about how to promote focus on energy programs to village residents. And this one is pretty exciting to me because in addition to just Wisconsin's focus on energy programs that can provide rebates to residents who do energy efficiency and weatherization programs and potentially renewable energy if you've got the right setup. With the Inflation Reduction Act, there's a whole other raft of tax incentives that are going to be available too. So I'm wondering if we want to expand this to beyond focus on energy and just help people, village residents, navigate some potential opportunities for reducing their carbon footprint through focus on energy, but also through federal incentives. Folks, does anybody have any thoughts about that?
It seems like that would be something that exists already, Melissa. I don't know if you run across that, either in Wisconsin, and all we need to do is just get the information out to.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think that we just need to probably put it on our village website. So I think the mechanics of this are somebody has to do the research to like synthesize what's out there and then share it with Brian. And Brian, you can update the village's website, the sustainability website, with that.
No problem.
And included in various, publications, newsletters, etc.
Yep, that's a great point too. So maybe in an upcoming newsletter, when's the next newsletter coming out?
We just had one not that long
Yeah,
ago.
we just published one. I think it will be a month and a half then.
That might be cool because it could give us some time to do some of the research around federal incentives and get our heads around that, because folks are still trying to understand how that's going to roll out and how people will be able to access it. So if I see at least 2 ways to share this information with village residents. One is through our newsletter and one is on the website. And if we've got, a little bit more lead time with the newsletter, that would be helpful. because with the IRA is so huge that people who are working on this are still trying to understand how it's going to roll out and how it's going to work. So
That's
let's aim to get something out in a future newsletter, but I'm glad that it's not actually right away.
yeah. I'm actually hopeful and that it exists somewhere else where somebody else can manage the updates that you mentioned, Melissa, and that we're just pointing to a site or sites that people can go to, and then as new information comes up, they update it, and we don't have to keep updating it on our website. Or at least if we just have links on our website, I guess that's one thing. But to
Yeah.
try to keep up with this is going to be really difficult. And poor Brian, I know he's gonna have a tough time with it. So if we can just really find a site or sites that do all that work for us, I think that'd be ideal. And I'd be happy to try to find that. So you can put me on this one.
Thank you, Kevin. Yep, that'd be great.
But I'm not optimistic that we're just going to find one site. I suspect we'll have to sort of have a few options.
I think that's exactly right. And I think that the trick here is trying to make it as user friendly from the residents' point of view. There's a ton of information out there about what potentially the IRA will do, but a lot of it isn't like very user friendly and very brass tacks in terms of what does it mean for somebody who's looking to replace a furnace, and you know what should I do today or in 2022. So I would like to make it digestible and easy. And Kevin, I'm going to be really interested to hear what your research reveals. I think it's going to be challenging to find even a few places where folks have figured it out, because I think folks are trying to figure it out in real time right now.
Well, and that's where I'm going with this. Is I kind of think the opposite, where I don't think we can digest it. I think what do people to make it easy for our residents? Okay, do it so that they can do it from their phone. So they get a newsletter link or whatever. They can click on a hot link, or they get a Facebook post or whatever social media post. They can click on a link that goes to our website that has a list of links. I think anything beyond that, is going to be difficult for us. And then each one of those links, here's the latest on solar, go here. Here's the latest on, electric cars, go here. But I don't think we're going to be able to make it any easier than that. People are going to have to do research. There's just all there is to it.
One thing that you could, I mean, most people are going to be serviced by MG&E, and MG&E has a lot of links directly to the Focus on Energy stuff right on their site, and a lot of other maximize energy savings within your home references and everything. I mean, we could probably easily just copy the link over to them, since they're the utility company anyway, and redirect people directly to their savings or their references for savings on that front too.
Yep.
Yeah, for Focus on Energy, that makes a lot of sense. The IRA is going to be, well, hopefully we can start using it before it's gone. So, all right.
And
That being said.
yeah, because is it 2031 that if it's not spent by, it disappears?
Yeah, I don't remember the day, but that can change.
Yeah. Okay, well, Kevin, I appreciate you doing any research you can to try to
Okay.
track down how people might be able to access, particularly those tax incentives for purchasing things like air source heat pumps and solar, rooftop solar, I think are some of the bigger things for home that are going to be useful for homeowners in our community to learn about. I wouldn't be surprised if geothermal is included in that as well. So yeah, that'd be really helpful if you were to try to track that down.
Okay.
Cool. And then the next item is replacing village vehicles at the end of their life cycle with electric, hybrid, or alternative energy vehicles. There was a conversation about this recently on the village board. Am I misremembering? And there was some dialogue about moving over to an electric vehicle, or did I just dream that?
No, it was in regards to replacing either vehicles for Parks and Rec or for facility. I can't remember.
Correct. Parks and Rec,
The gem vehicle.
yeah, the gem vehicle, we actually put in a grant through the state for trying to secure one of those, and they delayed the grant decision. I think that's going to be kicked to next year. But yeah, that is something that's in the capital improvement plan, and is something that the village is looking to secure.
Is there anything that the sustainability committee can do to support that, or to, you know, put our thumb on the scale there? Anything that we can do to help?
That, and Andy, that might be one that you could even offer better advice on that front.
I mean, I'm trying to remember, was the decision contingent on getting the grant, or, you know, as far as the approval of the vehicle, or is that going to come back once the grant comes through?
I think the vehicle was going, actually, that, you know what, that is a good question. I before I speak now, I might have to check that out. I have to reconfirm that.
Because if it's contingent on the grant, I would say we should write, you know, to get message in front of the board to say, well, even if if we don't acquire it, we should still make the right choice. But I guess let's wait to see what Brian finds out.
Okay. Andy, would you mind, with your 2 hands, lucky you, updating the spreadsheet there?
Yeah. Crosby's
Thank you.
on my lap, so I still have.
All right, I'm gonna take a look at the next priority, which is encouraging new homes to meet Energy Star home standards. This is, you know, this is really about new development in the area, and kind of would be really curious about what are our opportunities to influence developers and how we might do this. Okay, no ideas here.
You know, I don't think you can jump into a develop like where the village board or the village has its I guess most control over this issue would be prior to approval of a development, right? Once it's approved, you know, if it's not in the covenants or anything else, or in the agreement with the board or the village, we really don't have much leverage to say your new homes need to meet Energy Star standards or need to be efficient or whatever we might say. So it's going to really be new developments, and if that's the case, then we have to look into ordinance changes, and potentially even what's the big map called, Brian? The maybe Andy, you remember the not the master map, but they call it the well, basically a development map. You know, we pick areas where we want small, you know, small housing, large houses, residential, you know, 8 units, etc. Anyways, I would say it'd have to be in those in the ordinance or in our plans, development plans from the beginning.
So it seems like one insertion point is just, you know, getting like having that conduit to the village board, you know, having Andy and Michael, and getting this in front of them as a reminder that anytime we have new homes built in the village, that we want to encourage them to meet Energy Star home standards, and just like planting that seed now for when development opportunities come about. Kevin, you mentioned an ordinance. What would that look like? Would that, like, could you envision the Village of Cross Plains having an ordinance that new development must meet certain standards?
Right now, no.
Yeah.
But I'm optimistic for the future. And the other thing I would say is we should probably, this is Brian, maybe you can hit up some of our partner over there at the our planners.
Mm-hmm.
We do, Jessica, that's her name, right? And just maybe say, hey, does this exist in other communities? And if so, could you tell us what way, shape, or form that comes in?
Sure.
I mean, they work with dozens of other communities, and maybe they have that example. We don't have to start
Yeah.
from square one either.
I think an ordinance is the way to go, but I'd agree with Kevin that it's not likely to take place in the immediate future.
And just because I feel like, yeah, I would agree that it would be really hard to get the ordinance through. Is the ordinance, would you recommend the ordinance? Are you both recommending the ordinance just because it's just the strongest, it's the best way to ensure that it happens?
Yeah,
Versus-
and it's most defendable.
Mm,
Right.
mhm.
So yes, and I don't think it could. So I mentioned putting it into our comprehensive plan and our whatever the damn map is that I can't think of right now. In order, because I don't think you could do it everywhere, right? We want, to the degree we can, we want Energy Star homes, but we also want affordable homes, and can we have them both?
Mhm.
So I don't know the answer to that. My hunch is no, but maybe we can. It'd be great. But if we can't, then we have to make a decision, right? Affordable, Energy Star.
Do we have any requirements on size of buildings when you're building, new
Yes.
houses? Do they have to be a certain square footage?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a minimum size requirement.
Yeah, that seems like a problem.
We've lowered it most recently for the most recent development, in order to allow for smaller home sites, or smaller homes and smaller home sites for that matter.
And what was that process like to lower it? What is
Um,
that?
We changed our, what did we change? We changed our, it wasn't an ordinance, I don't think. We just changed our zoning for that area, or maybe allowed a variance in the zoning.
This is Michael. I think that we changed the developer's agreement with the developer. Meaning that they can only, that's like where you, like, a lot of times you define your smaller home sizes or the size of the house. So the developer knows I can only approve houses that are this big or bigger on certain lots. That's where I think it's done.
But they still have to meet the ordinance, right, Michael? So maybe
Yeah.
the ordinance wasn't that specific about the home sizes and just suggestive or something. But I know there's minimum home sizes depending on the comp plans. What did that call? On the zoning and the comp plan. Residential 1, 2, 3, etc.
Yeah, definitely. Those definitely drive home size as well, and lot size and everything.
Okay.
So that's in zoning, that the home size requirements, home size minimums are
Correct.
in our current zoning ordinances.
Correct.
Okay. So it sounds like you have to shift that, and you have to change the developer's agreement. Both of those things have to be true in order to allow smaller home sizes.
Yeah, I'm guessing a little bit here, Melissa, so I'm not 100%
Okay.
comfortable with what I'm saying here, but my recollection is the comprehensive plan allows for some flexibility, and we either went below that minimum size for that development out toward to the north, or or we were able to grant a variance within the ordinance to do it. So I don't know if we did it in the variance or we did it in a developer's agreement or both, but I know that we actually made a conscious effort to allow for smaller home sites or smaller home footprints, square foot.
Yeah.
And I could see something along the lines of a Energy Star home, say, and I'm just, again, kind of rolling with it here. If it's greater than X amount of feet, it should be Energy Star compliant. And if it's less than, then maybe you can get away with it. And if it's multi-unit,
Right.
you also have a certain requirement. So, and I just don't know enough about it to speak beyond that.
Yeah. Yeah, I think a little bit more research is needed here too, because I think it's my belief, and I haven't looked into Energy Star exactly, but it's my belief that this is more about energy efficiency
Yeah,
than it is about total home, energy conservation, energy use. And so if we're mandating that we have to have certain square footage minimums, and but they have to be energy efficient, it seems like we could also reduce our total carbon footprint if we allow smaller homes that are conserving energy and just aren't using it. So
right. Just by their size, right?
exactly. Yeah.
Well, I can't commit to. I'm very interested in this topic. I can't commit to it. I do think that we should maybe make a note in our recommended actions that we should be more general than Energy Star.
Yeah.
And just say, encourage new homes to be more efficient, and then doing that via, ordinance or other planning documents.
Yeah. So I'm noting the time. I'm realizing it's after 7 o'clock, and we could dig into all of these, could take an entire meeting. So I'm going to table, I think, the rest of the conversation for a future meeting. We all have enough next steps, and some of us have a lot of next steps. Andy, I think you are holding a lot right now for the committee. So recognizing that, I don't think we need to hand out much more. I'm going to review some of those next steps that we've talked about and see if I'm missing anything. So I'm going to draft a memo to the village board supporting the request for $5,000 for grant writing. And I will draft that with John, right, John? And if you're talking, you're muted. Or if you're
He
just
left
pretending.
a message. He had to pop out.
Okay.
He
Oh,
had to
okay.
drop off.
All right.
Yep.
Great. Oh, then let's sign him up for everything else. That's perfect. Okay, so John and I will work on that memo. Andy, you and I will pick up the conversation around creating some kind of decision process for the village when it comes to sustainability. And Andy, you are also going to work with somebody to do some research around 100% clean energy for the village, and just doing some research around what resolutions are already out there that we might be able to adapt for Cross Plains. Steve, you're going to do some research. You're going to find out, Brian, you're going to find out for sure where the village's medication drop is. And then from there, Steve, you're going to do some investigation about how we might be able to share that information out. Kevin, you're going to do some research on the Focus on Energy programs, how to point people to that, as well as anything that came out of the IRA that we might know about now, or where to even direct people to get more information. And you'll do some sleuthing around that. And do we have any? I think we don't have any next steps or anybody on point for the replacement of village vehicles at this point. I think we're going to wait to see what comes of the grant making decision, and then circle back to figure out our next steps. So that may be something we talk about on our next call. Does that seem right?
Yep. And
Sounds good.
seeing what the situation or the status is, whether we're approving contingent on the grant or whether we're approving regardless of grant.
Okay. All right. Anything else on this set of things, or anything else on the sustainability plan that folks want to raise before we wrap up for the night?
The very first one, I had the solar farm.
Yeah.
Basically we've exhausted our options for land that was available that would be feasible for a solar farm. There are still places that are options, but the ones that the village board was pursuing did not pan out. And so just figuring out what other options are out there that might work. If we find a location that the village can pursue, that might put it back onto the table, and then we can move forward in that vein.
Thank you, Andy. And Brian, you had a really productive conversation with MG&E around, because we had this conversation on our last call about working with MG&E and, you know, maybe pursuing renewable energy credits. So Brian, could you talk a little bit about that conversation and what came out of that?
Sure. Yeah, after that last sustainability meeting, I put together an email over to MG&E just asking some of the general questions that we had for them regarding some of the village's energy use and what percentage of the village's energy use was green energy based. The representative contacted me back. He said there's a lot of information to dissect in that, so he was hoping to get a little bit further clarity regarding, are we looking specifically at figures pertaining to the village's municipal buildings and green energy use, or are we talking the village as a whole? I think he just wants a little bit more focused area to try to look into to help us out. He also said he was very much willing to come speak with the committee at a future meeting to just kind of run through some of the various options that might be able to be established as far as future partnerships between MG&E and the village as far as green energy partnerships go. And just talk about some of the things on the horizon in terms of green energy and things that MG&E is looking at, and just sort of maybe help us become at the forefront of what things we can promote within the community.
Thanks, Brian. How do folks feel about having MG&E join us on a future call to provide some of those answers?
Yeah, they might be able to help us with the focus on energy stuff as well.
Great point,
Yeah.
Andy. That's great.
Yeah, great idea, I think.
Yeah,
Brian, would you be willing to reach back out to your contact and
Yeah.
invite for November?
Sure thing.
Okay. Terrific. Okay. Anything else on the topic of the sustainability plan implementation?
This is Michael just saying, just continued work on the ordinance update. I did some of the suggestions from last time, changed the purpose around, whittling down some of the confusing pieces. If anybody has any suggestions, you can email me, or ideas if you take a look at it. Otherwise, it's still going on.
Great. Thanks, Michael. And does anybody have any questions or any feedback from Michael tonight?
Thanks for the work, dude.
Yep. Same. Thank you, Michael.
All right. Well, with that, we've got our next steps, and we're going to be working on that between now and then. And we've got another next step, which is, Brian, you're going to reach out to MG&E and invite them to our November meeting. So lots of work to be happening between now and our next meeting in November, which is going to be pretty full with some of these updates. And with that, I would love a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Thank you, Andy. Is there a second?
Because there is.
Thanks, John. All right, all in favor of adjourning at 7:10, say aye.
Hi,
Hi.
Melissa.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Have a great rest of your night, and we'll talk again in a few weeks.
Thanks,
See you.
everybody.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.